this activity, and you may know, following later today is a similar conversation about student success for your trustees and presidents. And so today's activities, I'm trying to make sense of how it ended up on File Your Taxes Day. I'm not sure what the message is there, but April 15th is really the very next important step in a path New Jersey's community colleges started down about 3 years ago. And some of the presidents and others will remember an important statewide retreat with your trustees and our presidents at Hudson County Community College up in North Jersey about 3 years ago, where the group came together mindful of an emerging national conversation, clearly and deliberatively agreed to focus New Jersey's community college attention on student success. You know the great American community college story and the great New Jersey community college success story. If you had to pick one word, I suppose it would be access was the foundational pillar of the New Jersey community college system when it was founded, and continued over the next, I guess we're coming up on 50, sure. By the way, we've got 19 community colleges. I think about 5 or 6 at last count claim to be the first community college in New Jersey. It's all in the definition. First class, first building, first freeholder vote. They all embrace it. We're number 1, which is a good thing. So access, and boy, has that mission been beautifully fulfilled. Around 400,000 students strong. 400,000 students, 70-some campuses, depending on the day and the kind of travel one finds on our roadways, within a short commuting distance of every New Jerseyan is a local community college. Great success. But that event in Hudson County Community College emphasized, and today we will emphasize more, access is wonderful, but even more wonderful still is access to success. And we're going to be talking about what we mean by success. Completion. We're in the commencement time of the year. I just like to say to neighbors, you haven't lived a fully self-actualized life if you haven't not attended the community college commencement, which is so uplifting. And so here we are again talking about student success. Started 3 years ago, fast forward 3 years, and this Big Ideas project that our presidents have led the way on, which I hope you've all heard about, has really started to produce tangible results. And especially in the last 6 months, I think the progress has been really nothing short of remarkable. You're all busy doing what you're paid to do on your campuses, so when you give up your time for these statewide efforts, we are so grateful. But about 9 months ago, under the leadership of our presidents, this state organization, the council, created the Center for Student Success. It's not a geographic, physical center, but it's a center that, with some modest resources, is assisting our colleges down this path of student success. And in the last 6 months, I counted them up this morning on the drive here, today's events will be the 7th in a series of 7 prominent statewide student summits. In November, we convened, just to tick them off quickly so you see how we landed here. In November, we convened about 200 of our faculty who teach the gen ed courses, the Psych 101, the Social 101, and it started an important conversation about common learning outcomes in these gen ed courses, sometimes called gatekeeper courses. Think of the image, you got to get through the gate to get further down the path. So, and we brought those faculty together in a second summit, just a couple of weeks ago, to do further work on these high enrollment gen ed courses, the 10 top highest enrollment gen ed courses in our college. So we've got faculty working on that. Also in November, we convened over 200 developmental ed faculty, math and English and math. And they convened last Friday. Basil and others were there. And so great progress is being made on, in a statewide way, 19 times, really looking across the country and bringing in national experts to tell us how to improve our developmental math and developmental English programs. 2 Fridays ago, ESL, English as a Second Language. We brought in our statewide leaders, staff, and faculty, Hudson County Community College President Glenn Gaber and I were sitting next to each other. There are others that hit the same benchmark. 20% of Hudson's enrollments are ESL. And that's not to say it might be similar. So we've got to look at developmental ed, we've got to look at gen ed, but we've got to look at ESL. And I think our presidents have the wisdom to kind of pull ESL out as a separate arena, and so we're working on that. So that's 5 if I'm counting right. This is 6. Trustees tonight will be 7. So a lot of important work, faculty at the center of this, but what's missing in those first 5 summits? An important piece. You. The student services, student support personnel, the counselors, the advisors, the career counselors, the academic advisors. And I think that's what we'll hear in this conversation this morning about how critical your role is, whether it's through student success courses or whatever. Very important in supporting the core academic mission in important ways. So let's get started. We've got a great agenda, and hosted here by Middlesex County College. President Randall Pearl Morales will be with us at lunch. He's been one of our key presidents in all of this. The president's part of our organizational structure in New Jersey, which has worked well, all under the umbrella of the trustees, led by the presidents, and the presidents then hand off the work to be done to affinity groups, a phrase we coined in New Jersey, 8 affinity groups. One of them is key to this effort today, the Student Services Affinity Group. Each president designates one member of their staff to sit on this leadership team statewide. And so I want to thank that group for leading the charge here. Paula Brinson, Student Services Executive here at Middlesex, is the chair this year. She had a family emergency, called her away this morning, so she had the wisdom to turning to a very capable gentleman, Phil Infante. Phil's going to come up now, who's Executive Dean of Student Services at Essex County College. On behalf of Marla and on behalf of the Student Services Affinity Group to get us started. So let's get started by welcoming Phil. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Larry, and good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure this morning to bring you greetings from the statewide Student Affairs Affinity Group, led, as Larry said, by Marla Brinson, Dean of Enrollment and Student Support Services here at Middlesex County College, who again had an unexpected family emergency and couldn't be with us this morning. As I look out this morning and see key student affairs staff and administrators who day in and day out are the frontline personnel who work with our students, it strengthens my belief that we, the people in this room, are the glue that keeps the pieces of the students' puzzle together as they move to completion and graduation. You are admissions, advisement, registration, financial aid, career and personal counseling, transfer, student life, athletics, and much, much more. We ensure that students don't face unnecessary roadblocks so that they can focus on the important issues of academics. We, the statewide Student Affairs Affinity Group, and at this time I would like my colleagues who sit on the statewide group to stand up, please. Thank you, everybody. Stay up a minute, stay up. We, your statewide reps, applaud your hard work, your energy, and your dedication. You are the bold without boundaries. Enjoy the day.
My name is Bette Simmons, and I'm Vice President of Student Development and Enrollment Management at County College of Mars. And I'm here with my wonderful partner in crime, Dr. Paula Pando, the Executive Vice President of Student Affairs at Hudson County Community College. And Paula and I spent a lot of time over the last, I don't know how many years, on the Student Affairs Affinity Group, going to conferences, especially NASPA conferences. We've been recently at an AACMU conference in Miami. We spent a lot of time talking to one another, consulting with each other, as well as with the other 17 community college student affairs professionals, talking about what are ways in which we can enrich the student experience on our campuses. And you all are the reasons why we're able to do that very successfully. So I thank you all for being here this morning, and hopefully you will enjoy the day. What we have been tasked to do is to take a look at ways in which we, among the student affairs profession in the state of New Jersey community colleges, can enhance the possibility of student success and college completion. We received a charge from the student affairs folks here in New Jersey. We received a charge from the President's Council. We received a charge from the Council of County Colleges that talks about we have a part to play in all of this. And so what I'd like to do for you this morning, just for a very, very brief time, is to give you an opportunity to, thank you, Marcia. I want to talk to you all a little bit about that charge, what we've been asked to do by the President's Council. We want to share with you some of the best support service practices that we have identified among the student affairs, senior student affairs administrators in the 19 community colleges. Talk to you about the folks who have been identified to work on a concept paper that will pull it all together, that we will deliver to the President's Council in about 2 to 3 weeks. Share with you a little bit of information that reflects the research that was done by our good friends in Trenton, Lou Venturelli in particular, at the Council of County Colleges, and we greatly appreciate Lou and all of the great work that he has been doing on our behalf of the Council. Share with you the survey questions that we have submitted to our colleagues around the state. We're going to talk to you all a little bit about that. And then finally, wrap it up with an affinity group research. So the President's Council, you all know who they are. Those are those folks who, as my college president says, he turns the lights on and off at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. And they kind of set an agenda for what we do on our individual campuses. They pulled together, as Larry said, to come up with these big ideas. It was very, very impressive that they did not forget that the student affairs folks in the state of New Jersey have something to say about those big ideas. If we're going to talk about college completion, if we're going to talk about student success, if we're going to talk about students getting through the maze of our institutions, we have to have a seat at that table and to be a part of that conversation. And so during the fall semester, the President's Council contacted us and said, you know, we'd like to hear what you all have to say about the work that you do that will help support students and their success. It is critically important that student services be a part of that. At the conversation that we had on Friday, one of the speakers, I just loved what she said regarding the fact that, yes, the faculty have the ability to work with the students in the classroom, teach them the disciplines that they are working on, but that we cannot lose sight of what happens to the students outside of the classroom, their engagement on our campuses, their ability to manage the multitude of problems and issues that they are confronted with on a daily basis. If they can't take care of those issues outside the classroom, they cannot be successful inside the classroom. And that, folks, as you know, is our responsibility. So we appreciate that the President's Council asked us to kind of do a little bit of research about that and come back to them with what we felt were the best practices. And I in particular appreciate that they asked us, that they didn't say to us, here are the 5 things that we want you all to focus on, because then they're telling us our business. We know our business well, so we should be the ones telling them, here are the best practices, here are the issues, here are the initiatives that we have among our community colleges that we think will help our students be successful. So they did give us a couple of suggestions, because they do have their own agenda too. So we took those into consideration, and what we're hoping to do is to take those initiatives along with the ones that we've identified that will complement the students' ability to be successful in the classroom. And then we will recommend back to the President's Council where we think we should all focus together while they're working on developmental education, while they're working on college completion on the academic side. These are the kinds of things that we would like to do on the student services side. So here's the list of initiatives that we came up with. We just did a brainstorming session among the senior student affairs administrators. We talked about academic plans, educational plans. Students need to have what is now being called a roadmap to get from point A to point graduation or college completion, whatever that might be. We're talking about helping them identify what are the paths to that plan, how are they going to get there, what are the obstacles that will prevent them from being successful, and what kinds of ways, what measures will they put in place that will help them overcome those particular practices. And so one of the experiences that Dr. Pando and I had was to go down to Miami at the AAC&U conference where they talked about using a roadmap for quality success. And I must tell you, I was a little bit disappointed, and I think Paula would agree with me. We didn't get as much information as we thought that we would, because there was a lot more focus on those institutions that are part of their LEAP project. But at least it gave us a sense of, yeah, we know that we're heading in the right direction. We all know that the students need to have some sort of a plan. And so an academic educational plans will be one of the initiatives that we will be working on. Some of you among the colleges who are here may already be doing that, and this is a little bit of what we want to talk about with you all throughout the course of the day. What are the best practices that are going on here in the state of New Jersey that we can build upon and share with the President's Council and have them put a little bit more emphasis on that? We went around and around and around about how to best characterize advisement, what kind of advisement we want, whether it's intrusive, whether it's proactive, whether it's appreciative. The language of the day is appreciative. I want to be intrusive. I want to get in the face of the students and say, look, these are the things that you need to do, how you need to take your courses, how you need to manage those obstacles. But we're going to go with the politically correct language of the day. It might change in a week for appreciative advisement. And many of you, we're our academic advisors, or folks who run advisement centers. Are you all in the room? You all understand exactly what we're talking about, making sure that students know how to get through their academic programs, follow their curriculum, and identify the ways in which they can be successful. We wanted to match that with mandatory advisement. Some of us have what we think is called mandatory advisement. We tell the students you don't have any choice. You must come to an orientation and an advisement session. But we really feel like they don't all come. We know that they don't. They've got other things going on at the time that we're running these programs, and they are missing such critical information. So we want to try to figure out a way to really infuse that mandatory part of orientation as well as academic advisement and make sure that the student has all the critical information that they need when they first come onto the campus and then flow through. And that flow through would be a companion with the College Student Success course. How many of you already offer a freshman orientation course, College Student Success course? We at County College of Morris have been piloting one for a couple of semesters, and we are going into this summer and fall semester with a College Student Success course for certain students. And I was really pleased to hear, Larry, on Friday, there was a lot of conversation and a lot of recommendations that came out of the Developmental Ed Summit that talked about students needing to go through a College Student Success course. They need to know the tools to be successful. They need to, again, understand the maze of our institutions, the processes that we have in place, the culture of our campuses, who you can go to, who you can't go to, how you manage your money, your time, your talent, all those great things that are available in a student success course. And so we think that that will be an initiative that will continue to promote student success. Early warning systems. Another reason why I went down to the Miami conference was to find out what they were talking about with early warning systems. We need to know as soon as possible when students are in jeopardy of being successful. And there may be certain steps along the way that we need that notification. It can't be just at midterm and then again at the end of the semester. It's way too late 8 weeks into the semester. And so we need to talk about ways in which our institutions can work together on the academic side to provide the student support side with the information that we need that the student is at risk and that we need to step in and try to do something. Many of us who are Ellucian schools have the ability to have the retention alert module, and how we use that, how we encourage our faculty to use that to notify us when a student is at risk is a form of an early alert system. We need to develop that kind of a system even further. Peer mentoring and tutoring. It's very obvious to us that students sometimes learn better from their peers than they do from their faculty. They're able to break the information down in a way that they better understand it, they can really appreciate the concepts, and that they can give back. And then to connect them with a student who has done well academically can give them some insight as to what they did to help them be so successful. So that peer mentoring and tutoring is critically important. Student engagement. I know on my campus, we believe that it is so important for our students to get involved in as many of the campus life activities that we have on campus as possible that they can manage successfully. That they become a part of the college community, that it's not just coming to campus, take your classes, hopping in your car, and leaving campus immediately and going to work or whatever personal circumstances. but there was so much research out there that talks about the student that is engaged in our campuses is one who will be so much successful. I remember some research that was done a couple of years at Rutgers University, and they had done a survey of students who had graduated from the university, and they talked about what do you remember the most of your college experience, and what was the most helpful for you in being a successful student at Rutgers and beyond. And in almost 85, I think it was, 86% of the cases that they surveyed, the students remembered their experiences outside the classroom because it really took what they learned in the classroom and allowed them to apply it. And they will remember their involvement in our campus activities a lot better than they remember a faculty member and their academic experience. So we know that engaging the students will certainly lead to their academic success. I'm sure the faculty are not interested in hearing that. Incentives for enrollment full-time. You know, with all the federal regulations coming down for financial aid and how many semesters students have to complete in order to retain their financial aid and then move on, we're being pressured to get our students through a lot more fast and a lot more successfully. And so what we want to try to do is to talk to our students about what is the value of being a full-time student versus being a part-time student and taking your time. Now there are risks with that, as we know. Some students can't handle that academic load, even if it's one credit over part-time to full-time. Many of them have family responsibilities, depending upon the type of institution. I know one of the things that Dr. Pando and I talk about frequently is the fact that she comes from a very urban institution, whereas at Morris, we're extremely suburban. And the kind of characteristics that my institution reflects are very, very different from hers. And so I know that there's a lot more pressure on her than there is at the folks at County College of Morris to get the students through. So trying to get them to be full-time is a little bit more of a challenge than it is for my students because they truly want to be full-time. But we have to talk to our students about what is the value of being full-time. Why is it important to try to get you through in at least 3 years so that you can then continue on with your education? And how do you manage all of that? And so we're doing some research on those incentives. And then finally, we can't deny the fact that technology is affecting every single thing that our students are doing and that we do with our students. Whether they're coming into the admissions process, getting themselves registered, the classes that they take, whether they're online, hybrid, even those classes that are supplemented with technology, the services that we provide, there's got to be that high-tech, high-touch, and how do we make sure that that helps them to be successful and that they can manage it all. We all know the data that is sitting out there regarding the low success rate of students who are completely online. How do you make that balance and that shift? Because there are those students who, I have to take my classes online. I'm a full-time mother, single, working, and I don't have a lot of time to get to my campus. I have to be full-time. Well, how do we provide them with services in that kind of environment where they have no choice? So these are the student services that we're looking at and doing a little bit of research on. The we who is doing this, I have to tell you, we had a meeting in December, I think it was, at Brookdale, and Marla Brinson, our esteemed president of our association, said, you know, folks, I need some volunteers who are going to work on writing this concept paper. And again, as my staff know, I have a hard time saying no to doing things. So I raised my hand and I said, Marla, I'm there for you. I'll help you. And along with me will be Paula, Ralph, and Rich. I mean, they didn't have a choice. Well, they did. But they very graciously agreed to work with me in crafting this white paper. And I'm very honored to have the three of them work with me. So, and it was important for us, again, to have representatives of the diversity of our institutions. And so having Paula and Ralph, who represent more of the urban schools, and then Rich, who has recently been appointed the Dean of Student Services at Brookdale, and we again congratulate him on that. Brookdale Community College and I, we are working on this white paper. We've begun to do a little bit of research into all of those initiatives that I just went through with you. Ex officio, again, we have Marla, who has been there for us every step of the way. Lou Venturelli, again, who is the coordinator of the Center for Student Success at the New Jersey Council of County Colleges. Very refreshing young man. It's so nice to be working with a young professional who also has a lot of energy and knows how to do the technology and do the research for us. So Lou, we really greatly appreciate. And then Jim Davey, who you will meet who is a long-term colleague of mine from way back when he and I were in undergraduate school together, who knew we would reconnect here in New Jersey, who also works for the Council of County Colleges, and you'll meet him a little bit later. He's been helping to direct our process. So the first thing that we did after we identified the services is that we wanted to get a sense of whether our colleagues around the state agreed with those initiatives and what else is going on in the state that we may not know about. And so we sent out a survey to the senior student affairs administrators of the 19 community colleges. I believe we got responses back from 11 of them, and we're collating the responses. But we thought it was important, and Paula will walk you through a process. We also wanted you all to know what the survey was. Now, in some cases, the surveys may have been shared with you all, so you have already seen it, and you have added to the body of knowledge that we've gained. Others of you, this may be the first time that you're seeing the questions that we asked. But we wanted to know why, from our perspective, student success is important. We've heard about the Obama administration and the President's Ball. We know what the presidents here in the state of New Jersey are expecting of us. You all hear from your vice presidents, your deans of students frequently, that we've got to get our students to be much more successful. But we wanted to hear from ourselves as to why we thought student success was important, and why does it matter in particular to the community colleges in the state of New Jersey. We also wanted them to rank the services among that group that I went through with you. And interestingly enough, the ones that we thought were going to come to the top of the list did not necessarily come to the top of the list. If I remember correctly, the educational plans was important, the student success course was important, and I forget what the third one was that was important. Do you remember what the third one was? Student engagement. Student engagement, thank you. Were the top three that were important. So we're going to not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to pay attention to the others in the list, but we are going to, in fact, do a little bit more emphasis on those. Then we wanted to know what were the best practices among our 19 community colleges. You all are doing some really good work in the state of New Jersey, and we did not want to discount that. So we asked the senior student affairs administrators, tell us what's going on your campuses that you're very proud of. But more importantly, tell us about, is there anything that you would like to do on your campus that you're unable to do because of resources, whether it be financial, whether it be personal, whether it be facilities. What are the things, if you had a wish list, that you would like to be able to do? What would that be? And so we've collated not a lot of information about that. I think most of it was give me more staff and give me more money, and I can do a better job at what we know we're already doing, which is not such a bad response. Assessment is critically important. We cannot not do assessment. And if your institutions are not doing the assessment of your student support services, you need to start doing that. That is a way for us to validate the work that we're doing and how richly important it is to our students and to our institutions. Folks look at assessment data. The state of New Jersey looks at assessment data. Our presidents look at assessment data. We need to be able to say, this program is running very well, and let me explain to you why. And it's got to be more than just the numbers. If you can get 300 students to an event, that's great. But what is it that they're learning at the end of that event? And how do you know? What did you gather? How did you gather it? And how are you going to be using that to inform any particular changes that you do in the future? Please, folks, make sure that we're doing assessments, so we talked about that. And then we wanted to know what else we needed to keep in mind to strengthen student success and completion. Again, we're the experts in our fields. We're the ones who need to be saying to those of us, those folks who are in the president's office in the state of New Jersey, this is how you can pay attention to student success and completion from the student services perspective. So we gathered all of this content. Our really good friends in the Council of County Colleges has worked to pull all of that data together for us. So we're going to really start to pull together and determine whether there are any emerging topics that we need to really pay attention to. A lot of that will come from the responses to the questions regarding what else is out there that if you could do, which you're not doing right now, you would be able to do. Making sure that we broaden our horizon in terms of what else is going on around the country. So the research that has been done has taken a look at some of the best practices in some of the other states in the nation. We've looked a lot at Sinclair Community College to see what they're doing. They're one of the premier schools. Certainly the community college system in Florida and Arizona They're doing some really great work there, so we want to try to replicate some of the things that they're doing in those states, but do it New Jersey's way. And it's important to remember that we're talking about the state of New Jersey. Talk about the best practices that we have identified, and then obtain information from other folks. And that's one of the things that we'd like to hear from you all today. A little bit later on, we'll do some exercises where you all will share with us some of your thoughts about that. So, next steps is for us to hear from our fabulous speakers and gather from them some ideas on ways in which they believe we can focus on student support and completion. My good friend and partner in crime, Paula, will take us to the next step and introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Betty. Great friend, great colleague, and I have learned a tremendous amount from you and have had a heck of a lot of fun with you all too. I feel like, do you remember that show, Let's Make a Deal? What's behind the box? What's behind the curtain? One of the things that Dr. Simmons talked about was that we put forth a survey to the senior student services officers in the state. And we asked them to give us information based on those survey questions that you all just saw. But one of the things, when Betty and I were talking in Miami about today, among other things, was that we wondered how many of you on the ground, front line, with the services day to day, have something to offer to that conversation, and perhaps the question wasn't asked to you. So there are cards at every table, and we encourage you, anyone, everyone in this room, whether you're student affairs, not student affairs, someone who has been through college, knows someone who's going to college, if you have any thoughts on programs, services, initiatives that help students succeed. How many of you go to conferences and you come out feeling really refreshed and invigorated and thinking, yes, this is something we can do on our campus, and then you come back and you either get mired in the responsibility of the day, and that kind of goes in that little file. One day, maybe we'll do that. Or perhaps you come back enthusiastic and perhaps are not met with equal enthusiasm about that idea, or are met with enthusiasm for the idea, but the answer is we don't have the funds, we really don't have the personnel to do that, maybe next year. We want to hear from you. It could be initiatives that you've heard of at conferences. It could be initiatives you've been a part of. It could be experiences you had yourself as a student. I can tell you I have my own experiences as a student that were life changers for me. Life changers. And I tell this story to the staff members at Hudson County Community College. They're sick of hearing it. But for me, the difference between staying in college and not staying in college as a minority, Hispanic young woman, first in her family going to college, and I felt like a fraud in my first semester as an undergraduate. I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't know who to turn to, and I was going in 12 weeks after the start of my first semester in college. I was going into the dean's office to leave. I was just going to leave. And it was a secretary. It was the secretary in the dean's office. I'll never forget her, Miss Vivica Jackson, 65-year-old African-American lady that said to me, you can't leave. You can't leave. At least finish the semester. At least finish the semester, because even if you decide to go after the end of the semester, you have something in the bank. You have 12 credits in the bank, and you can move on. If you leave now, you have nothing. You have absolutely nothing. And she talked to me and she counseled me, and I stayed to the end of the semester. And when I had that collateral in the bank, I wanted a little more. And a little more, and eventually I did find my way, but I ended up checking back. So those meaningful interactions that can take place just about anywhere on your campus. And Dr. Simmons and I, when we were at Miami, one of the really valuable experiences was hearing Dr. Terry O'Banion talk about student success. And roadmaps to student success. And the number one guiding principle that he talked about was students making a meaningful contact immediately after they start or while they're beginning, but that contact, that person they feel they can go to, that someone knows their name, That brought back a lot to me because I remember it was a secretary in the Humanities and Social Sciences Division that was responsible in many ways for me seeing out my first semester, which then catapulted me through the rest. So it could be experiences you had as a student. It could be things you've heard about at a conference, initiatives that you're working on, that you're seeing the fruits of that labor. We'd love to hear from you. We're going very high tech, as you can see, but sometimes I feel like if I write it down, it's mine versus putting it on a computer. Maybe that just makes me old. But if you write it down, we want to hear it. This will be up for the entire day, so there's no time limit. Just before you leave Middlesex, if you have something that you want to say, please say it. Now, do I get the pleasure of? Okay. So yesterday, I saw the special someone in my life choke up and cry as an Australian was winning the Masters tournament and putting on a green jacket. I literally saw him cry. And he thought, I would love to meet this man and so forth. And all of the guys in my family who are jocks, they were talking about meeting their hero, meeting their idol, and yada, yada, yada. Well, I'm a lucky girl today because I get to introduce my crush. I'm your #1 fan. Several years ago, I embarked on my doctoral journey at Rowan University, and I'm actually a graduate of the first cohort in the Community College Leadership Initiative. And while taking my courses in that program and working full-time and raising 3 kids, life was a little bit crazy, but good because I had to compartmentalize. This is the time I need for school. This is the time I need for work. There was no time for distractions. And in this program, I met and I wish the other members of the fan club were flanking me today. Dr. Maris Lown from Union County College, who was a classmate of mine, Dr. Scott Ridley from Brooks Hill Community College, and countless others, but they were really on the rah-rah team. We commented that this person is literally the smartest person we've ever met. The smartest person we've ever met. She is leaving the state of New Jersey. The president of Raritan. I know. It is with great sadness that our colleague, a leader in the state of New Jersey, the big brain behind the big ideas, really a leader in challenging our assumptions and making us do a better job. I remember Dr. Crabill would say to us, yes, maybe we can't do this, but we can do better than what we're doing now. There's always a challenge of doing better. We can do a better job. We can always do a better job. And we know that for all of you, again, working frontline with students, we're resource challenged. Sometimes we wonder how we're going to get the job done. But it's folks like the person I'm introducing, Dr. Casey Crabill from Raritan Valley Community College, that really do help energize us and to remember why we got in this business to begin with. We got into this business because we want to make a difference in students' lives at whatever level you're working at, whether you're the vice president for student affairs, a counselor, an admissions clerk, whatever it is, we can all make a difference. We can all do better. And when times are tough and we're having trouble figuring out how we're going to balance our workload, we dig deep to go back to that place, that professional core. Why did we get in this business to begin with? And Casey reminded us, and reminds me every day, why we got in this business, because I want to be Casey when I grow up. So without further ado, I'd like to present our colleague, esteemed and respected colleague, Dr. Casey Crabill from Raritan Valley.
Next. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's great to have a chance to be with you this morning, share some thoughts. I don't have a PowerPoint because I really want to take you from the nitty-gritty to about 30,000 feet, just to think about the context in which you'll be doing your work today. I'm going to share some of the thoughts about the big ideas. They really do continue to serve as a point of collaboration across our sector, and it never ceases to amaze me that we have found 8 things to bring together 19 institutions across hundreds of square miles with people who rarely agree on anything. So when you think about the power of that collaboration, even when there isn't a chancellor making us do it, it's pretty impressive. And it aligns us, I think, in a way to get some really important work done. As Larry mentioned earlier, these big ideas generated from a group of trustees and presidents who met in a retreat. And really, we met to consider the following question. What can we do to ensure that our colleges continue to function as we experience historic demands in increased enrollment and historic reductions in state and county funding? So the historic increases in increased enrollment lets you know the question was about 3 years ago, right? We saw this as a state that we would call the new normal. Well, 3 years later, the growth pattern has really subsided substantially. Most of us are larger than we were, but we're not growing at the pace that we were. And some institutions have seen a small drop back from those historic highs. But the reductions in funding, unfortunately, have not subsided as noticeably. Most of us, while we're larger than we were in 2010, we have a much more substantial reliance on tuition revenue. I think in hindsight, we were asking a relevant question, but we were perhaps asking a question that was a little bit too timid. We wondered how these colleges would continue to function. I think we've evolved now to demand that we do more than continue to function. We're looking to thrive. And this, I believe, is the encouraging development. Perhaps even more encouraging, however, is the collective transition in our thinking that leads us now to understand that the way we thrive as institutions is to focus not on the success of our budgets, but on the success of our students. Sounds simple, right? Well, I'd like to set my remarks today in relationship to your theme, Bold Without Boundaries. I think that's an inspirational way to start off a Monday. It inspires some courage and some creativity, and that's good. But it's likely that there are some of you coming off the weekend, sitting in the room, even in a room full of people invited because of their leadership, their passion, and their commitment. Some of you I know are thinking, without boundaries, really? I can't even get funding for whatever. And you want me to feel like we don't have any limits. Really? Okay. So let me suggest maybe something in the middle. That we definitely need you to be bold. And we need you to be pushing whatever boundaries you can move. And I'd like to talk about just a couple of them that I think are well within our control. Because I know you'll be working later, talking across colleges and talking within colleges to try to develop some feedback and move this agenda along. So maybe even today we can push some of these boundaries down the road a little bit. The first one I want to talk about is the evil financial boundary. Sometimes, and you've heard it this morning already, sometimes in education, it absolutely feels like every good idea has to be diminished immediately because budgets are real. And they are. And unlike people who seem nostalgic, I do not remember the good old days when we had enough cash to do whatever we wanted to do. And I've frankly never met anyone who does. We have always been about the business of balancing resources to do the things that we believe most important. Limited financial resources indeed give us limited personnel. Unfortunately, at a time when we're facing increased student needs. Does that sound familiar? That's like the question that kicked off the big ideas, right? Limited resources, increasing needs. But now it's in your department. In the old days, students came to you for advice, for planning, to choose courses, to figure out who they wanted to be. Now they come for food, shelter, mental health care, legal issues, and advice and planning and choosing courses and figuring out who they want to be. So your role has expanded. Your need to deal with students has expanded, even as our resources contract. And you're absolutely right. This kind of increase takes a bold response. Programs? Sure. Staff development? Absolutely. Both of those need to be a part of the answer, but that's probably not enough. I would argue that here we need an expansion of the boundaries. We have always been proud to have the word community in our name. Now we need it in our response. We need new community partners, faith-based organizations, food pantries, social service agencies, domestic abuse shelters, and the like. We need them on our team. Anybody, and there probably, this is student services, there are a lot of you in the room who read Maslow in your graduate programs. All of you know that somebody seeking to meet their basic needs is not at a point where she can succeed in an educational program. So in some cases, our work on student success is at a very fundamental level and needs to expand the boundaries outside of our institution in new ways. Second, we face boundaries created by our history. I'm going to talk a little more about what Larry talked about with access. We were formed around this powerful concept. We believed we would be the doorway to higher education for those who were not served by the traditional senior institutions. We'd be open to anyone seeking this education, and we'd provide the opportunity. Now, I'm old enough to remember this. This was revolutionary. Talk to people on your campus who were there at the beginning, 1968 in New Jersey. Except for Union, I know, they've got a history of a junior college. That's a little bit longer, but find people from 1968. These people who built community colleges, and at one point in America, there was a community college opening every single week. These people, when they talked about community colleges, they didn't talk about us as educational institutions, they talked about us as a movement. That was powerful, inspirational. And for many of us, it still is. And for those for whom it is not, it needs to be. But we've come to understand this concept of access as a little bit limited. That providing opportunity without support and a structure to enable students to seize that opportunity is only half the challenge. We've got to move students to completion because their economic future, that of their families, and by extension that of our communities, absolutely depends on it. So in very bold fashion, we have to challenge the habits we created through our history, looking at it through the lens of not just access, but access to something that the student intends, or access to success. As a result, retention must be a key focus, not enrollment numbers. We have a history of telling us how many students go to school. That hides what we're doing. That hides the patterns, and those patterns can help us do better. Also, we've got to move from our culture of anecdote and the comfort that we have with it. This is hard. It will require bold thinking, strong will. Why? Because stories move us. Each of us in this room could name students we know whose lives have been changed by their time at our colleges. Those students are motivational. Their achievements are remarkable. We tell our friends about that. It's a conversation when we get together. But our reliance on those stories as evidence of how well we're doing, well, it feels good, but it doesn't help. We need to move boldly to develop, embrace, and analyze data, the good and the bad. We don't want to lose the power of the story, but we need to make the data equally powerful so that we can base our programs, our services, our staffing, and our response to students on that data. We also face boundaries created by our habits of process. These form the stories we tell students. I remember, I won't say how long ago, but when I first started in this business, I was a faculty member, and we were trained to do advising. We helped out on the big, busy advising days when there'd be hundreds of students in the gym. And we were told how to do that, okay. And here were the things we said to students. Don't worry, start slow. You get used to college. You can come anytime. Developmental coursework, that's the way forward. And people are here to help. If you need them, come and find them. That's what we told students. And in many cases, that's what we still tell students. Well, our good friend from Princeton, Albert Einstein, is reported to have remarked that the definition of sheer insanity might be understood as continuing to do the same thing over and over again while expecting different results. Said another way, our colleges are perfectly set up to deliver the results that we're getting. So when you look at the data, you understand the stories you tell students, start slow, take a little bite of the apple. Your processes, your programs, your systems are perfectly designed to deliver the graduation rate, the retention rate, and the success rate that you're currently experiencing. We now know from research that students who attend full-time are much more likely to graduate. that many students get stuck in developmental coursework, and that in many colleges, fewer than 20% of those students even succeed in taking one college-level course. And we know that culturally, for many of our students, asking for help is a non-starter. It's simply unacceptable. We know these things. Knowing them obligates us as professionals to change our own discourse. Here's where we must be bold, and here's where we must absolutely push the boundaries. We have to move from a culture of suggesting, a culture of hands-off, and yes, Betty, I'm going to use the word, to a culture of intrude, intrude, intrude. And to intrude effectively, we have to ensure that the partnership between academics and student service is way more than lines on an org chart or lip service. Student services professionals are absolutely needed in leadership roles to meet the challenges of the big ideas, and we absolutely welcome your participation today and your leadership in the years to come. New Jersey indeed has big ideas. Transform developmental education. Establish a seamless transition from K-12 to college with a focus on college readiness for all students. Strengthen our support for adjunct faculty. Strengthen our gateway general education courses. Fully embrace technology and alternative instructional delivery, with all 19 colleges aligning. All of these will move us together in a strong direction, but the underlying foundation, perhaps the really biggest idea we've had, is to ensure that we're working together as a sector to take perhaps the most powerful idea in the history of American higher education, the idea that everyone should have access to the chance to build the kind of life that can be supported by a college degree, the founding notion of community colleges, to take that idea forward with a focus not on who starts college, but on who finishes. That demands bold action on our part so that our students can build a life without boundaries. You are the people to do it. Your work is here today, and I'm so delighted to be a part of that. Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions? Yes.
Hi. I have a question about completion. I know
Could
that,
you stand up and introduce
Oh,
yourself?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
hi, I'm Jan Jones. I'm a counselor at Sussex County Community College, about 7 hours away from here.
Made good time, huh?
Yeah. My question is about completion. I understand the need for students to graduate, but many students, for many students that come, that's not their goal. You know, their goal is to take 2 accounting classes, their goal is to learn how to use a computer, to take that art class they never got to take when they were students. How do we look at them without looking at them as failures because they don't graduate? Thanks.
Data. I think, I know from our college, it would be difficult for me to answer exactly how many students walking through the door tell me that they want to take an art class. I know that we tell each other that, and I really know for 30 years we've been telling each other that. And one of the other things we tell each other is that students transfer before they graduate. That's why they don't get degrees. Well, that I can tell you from my college because we looked at that. And when we looked at that, we thought, well, maybe that can help us put together a picture of success. So what the colleges did together was to develop a model of student success. Now, it doesn't account for the person who just wants to take ceramics and move on, or take ceramics and stay forever, because you have those too. But it does account for the large amount of students by looking at 3 indicators after 6 years. We said, okay, students come full-time, part-time, in and out. Let's give a reasonable time frame. So after 6 years, we look for 3 things. Did they get a degree? Did they transfer before they get a degree? Or did they get 30 credits and have a decent GPA, 2.0? So are they academically eligible to consider them to continue, but maybe they're doing something else? We said if they hit any of those success indicators, we call them success. Now, I'm very proud of my college. I think we do a great job. I think we're a high-flying college. But when I look at the data for our cohort from 2006 at Raritan Valley, those 3 success indicators explain just under half. So there's something, because my accounting and ceramics classes are not that full. So I think it's a matter of unpeeling it a little and figuring out how to ask students the right questions on the way in so that we have a sense of what their initial goals are, realizing that part of our job is to impact those goals in their enrollment with us, and then tracking it over time, perhaps by cohorts, perhaps divided up in a different way, to understand and assess what has been the college's impact on those folks.
Any other questions? Yes, please stand up and introduce yourself.
Charlotte Quigley, Middlesex County College.
I'm Charlotte Quigley, Middlesex County College. Now I'm nervous and I'm probably not going to remember the question. Dr. Crabill, you touched on the definition of expanding the boundaries for the students' purposes to be able to boldly support a lifestyle that lets them live the lives they want. And so I think the definition of success needs to reflect what the students incoming are saying that their goals are. Is success appropriately measured in their achievement of their career goals or ability to attain a sustainable job? And how many of the students' input into these definitions of success are we going after in this process?
So when you look at your admissions application, you'll get one answer to that question, right? Because we give students a series of things they can opt into. But I think as colleges get better at understanding the impact, I remember when I first started teaching, one of the senior teachers in my department said, you know, they come in thinking they're going to take a few classes. Our job is to convince them they can do more than that. And I think that that's still true when you think about students who walk through the door, particularly students for whom walking through the door was a big challenge, right? It takes a lot of courage sometimes to say, yeah, okay, I'll put myself up to this. But our job is to impact those goals. We really need a system so that our counselors and advisors can keep track of the work that they do interacting with students over time, or a place where students can record, perhaps in a degree audit system, some way where the students can record that their goals have changed, or that their desires have changed, or they've got a new intention. I don't think that many of us have intake processes that do much of a deep dive on where a student thinks they're going. And I'm not aware of any college in New Jersey that does a substantial tracking over time, at least across all students. I do think that you've got some models in some of the career-focused programs that stay close to the students and not just following them through the completion of the degree, but many of our programs follow them into their first employment. And for a period of time after that first employment, that might be a model that you want to look at.
I want to invite one of our leaders from South Jersey, Maud Goodnight, Cumberland County College. You know, one of the national contexts for this conversation is a very important national emerging network called Achieving the Dream. And we're very fortunate in New Jersey that Raritan Valley Community College, Central Jersey, if you will, Passaic Community College, North Jersey, Cumberland County College, and Atlantic Cape Community College are in the Achieving the Dream network. Well, I'm curious if have you heard these three wonderful comments and cases. I feel like I can walk on water. That's how inspired I am from Casey's comments. But from your perspective, Mon, in Achieving the Dream College, what do you make of all of this? And might you have a question?
Good morning. Maud Goodnight from Cumberland County College. Something that really struck me that you were saying, Casey, and Raritan is also, of course, an Achieve the Dream school, is the unpeeling of the data. And what Achieve the Dream states is that we need to disaggregate the data in order to understand the student patterns. One of the things that we have learned in our first 2 years now is how different the institutions are across New Jersey. We are very rural, we are very suburban, very, very different schools. And the data really helps us to understand our particular student needs. Achieve the Dream challenges us to take the data, unpack it, and look at where the barriers are at our particular institutions, and then determine what can we do regarding those barriers in order to encourage student success. Many of us have already determined that there were learning issues in the mathematics and in the remedial developmental education area, and that's of course a national trend. It's happening all across the nation. But also that the students have to develop their aspirations and goals. It's not just what they come in with, here's what I want to do. But as so many of us in student services have observed, the students grow and develop their aspirations while they are at the community college. So a year later or 2 years later, that student has now aspired higher often, and they really, really want to get that bachelor's degree, to get the associate degree, to get the master's degree, and doctorates even. So it's really, really an exciting place to be. In Achieve the Dream, one thing that we have learned also is that we're in the most exciting place in higher education. This is where it's really, really happening. This is where the light bulbs are going off. And we just really need to learn from each other and share the information and our solutions. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I wanted to ask, even in looking at how the affinity groups are divided, has there been any focus on collaboration between the groups? Sometimes developmental departments don't even talk to, you know, the reading and the writing, don't talk to the English department. It's important that student services collaborate with the academic side. How do you bring those groups together to respect one another, to listen to one another, to appreciate each other's roles? Because big ideas in one area without the other isn't going to lead to student success.
So, institutions are people, right? And people sometimes bring their best selves and sometimes bring their challenging selves to a situation. But what I know about community college people is that at the end of the day, if you push them really hard, there isn't one of them who will walk out unscathed. And that's really the fundamental key, I think, to bringing people together to make these changes. If it becomes a change to make because math's at fault, or English is at fault, or there's something wrong with counseling, then you've got, you know, we've all seen it, right? The 30-year turf battle that none of us will live long enough to see the end of. But if the change is because the data tells you that the way you're working now, you've got a 18% graduation rate, and you agree as professionals that 18% isn't anything you want to put on your billboard, I think there's a way to begin to bring people together for those changes. One of the things I worry about, because when I see the developmental folks working, I see an awful lot going on in the math department. I agree with Maud. I think the math faculty in the Achieving the Dream schools are off the charts in terms of what they're trying to do. And I worry that if counseling and advising doesn't keep up with those changes, then students won't be encouraged to pursue math because people are thinking, oh, it's the old model, nobody gets through, we're not sending them there. So I think that campus-based conversation is really important, and I see about 150 people in this room who could start them. I don't think you need your president's permission, your director's permission, your dean's permission to have a conversation with a colleague about student success, because that is fundamentally at the core of where your lives intersect. So I think it's a great conversation to start with the people that you go to lunch with, the people you hang out with, the people you pass in the library, the people that you've had a good working relationship with. Ask them to be invited to departmental meetings. Tell them you went to the summit. Tell them what you talked about. Ask how that resonates with the work they're doing. If you start with a focus on students, and you start from a point of questioning, I think that's the best way to move forward.
If I could just add to that, that's one area where I'm exceptionally proud of Hudson County Community College and the work we do and the partnership that we have with academic affairs. We know, and they know, that without each other, it's just not going to work. We've created something during those peak crazy periods at Hudson County Community College, and you know, everyone in this room knows those periods, about 4 weeks leading up to the start of the term, where typically the conversations start, academic folks, oh, you know, all they care about is enrollment, who's going to teach these classes, and the student affairs, oh, they're just not opening classes, we've got all these students. And so rather than continue that drama, that we can go that way, our folks took a very different approach and created something called the Situation Room. And that is a meeting every single day leading up to the start of the term with empowered people in academic and student affairs who are meeting at the end of the day and take a look at inventory, how many students do we have in the pipeline, how many are tested, where are they likely to go, how many classes. We have the registrar in the room, laptop in the room, opening up sections on demand with the student services people in the room having that conversation and identifying. The folks that are responsible for that are in the right-hand corner of the room, and something they've done really wonderfully, and I don't know, Mike or Dwayne, I don't want to put you on the spot if you want to talk briefly about it, the initiative with developmental education and the counselors working as supplemental folks in each class. Would you want to just 2 seconds on that?
I never missed a speaking opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Pando. This semester, just very briefly, we're down to 6 counselors at our Jersey City location, so we too know how things are, but we never use it as an excuse, so we're always looking for ways to better things. And actually, most of our counselors are here today, so I thank them for the work going on here. But what we did was we have 6 counselors for 9,000 students. We have an EUF program, we have faculty advising, so obviously we can't have a caseload program. We do, the next person that comes in gets the next counselor. So we pair with our lowest levels of foundations, and next semester with our lowest levels of ESL, a counselor into each of the sections, also a tutor into each of the sections. And those counselors go the first 2 weeks of school, make an hour presentation about the out of the classroom time management kind of student success course type things. And they work, and they're the face for the students to go. So we'll have data at the end of the semester, but it seems to be working very great for at least the lowest levels of both our ESL and our foundation program.
So again, taking that meaningful connection, counselors in the places where students are most likely to become discouraged, drop out, stop out. We have counselors, a face, a name, a card, a number, a contact person for each one of those students with our counseling staff. We want them to have those folks. And that's for all of the sections, and it's challenging work. It's not easy, people having to stay late and so forth. But again, when you ask folks to go back to their professional core, why did you get into this business to begin with? I have always found that the counselors step up to that challenge when you ask them to revisit that core. Yes.
Hello, Dr. LaTanya Ashford-Lagon, Mercer County Community College, classmate of Dr. Pando, student of Dr. Crabill. My question is definition of student. Is a first semester student, no matter what age you are, or is there anything different for the adult student or the non-traditional student, even in terms of the white paper? Are there different chapters? Are we to treat our adults any differently than our less than 25?
In terms of the white paper, we're not going to differentiate between students and classification of students. And I think that you bring up a really good question in terms of who are our first-time students, and then how do the adult population fit in. I think most of our institutions are trying to determine exactly what the right criteria is for that category of students, especially since there is the anticipation that we are going to be seeing more and more adult students come into our institutions as the high school population begins to decline. But from the perspective of the white paper, there will be no differentiation. All the services that we're going to talk about, we'll talk about our students across the board. There may be some little bit of shifts as we focus a little bit on the adult students, but not necessarily so much. And I don't know, Dr. Crabill, if you want to categorize the adult students?
I would just say from our Achieving the Dream research on our campus, along the line of disaggregated data, when we looked at completion, our students over 30 were among the lowest likely to complete. So we have a particular focus on them, but it did come out of a pre-designed categorization. It really came out of looking at our own data.
Any other questions? So what I'd like to just do very quickly is to remind you again of the questions that we asked the senior student affairs administrators among the 19 community colleges, and see if there are any responses that you all might want to give to help inform the development of our concept paper. Again, where we sit in the senior student affairs administrator chair may not necessarily be the same as where you all are on the ground doing the work, making sure that all of our initiatives are out there. In particular, it's really important to us that if there is a best practice that is happening on your campus, that you let us know what those practices are, because we can learn from what we're doing here in the state of New Jersey. Yes, we can look into Florida, we can look into California, we can see what the folks are doing out there in Arizona and in Ohio, but we want to also be very respectful of what we are doing. In Maryland, I'm so sorry. Illinois, and in Texas. But we also want to make sure that we give respect to the great work that we're doing here in the state of New Jersey. So I'd like to know if there are any practices that you all are particularly proud of at your institutions. And then also, the all-important question, if you did have the resources, there wasn't a question of finances, of facilities, of human factor, what would you want to see happen on your campus? And I think we have like 5 minutes before we have to break. So if anybody would like to answer that question for us, if you had no questions, no holds barred, the world is your oyster, what would you like to see happen on your campus or in the state of New Jersey? What would that be? No shock.
Be bold.
Be bold. Be bold without boundaries. Like,
I will simply say that I think our entire campus should follow an EOF model. To make it simple, that the work done in EOF, where there's concentrated counselor services for a small number of students, has proven to be successful. And that if we could ever, with the proper funding, if we broadened that to the entire campus, I think we would be successful across the state.
I'm wondering if you can guess what my role is at Middlesex County College, but I would like to be able to have access to students really early on, to be able to connect them with what they're doing from day one to where they see themselves going career-wise, and how that all builds step by step, piece by piece, and let them be able to visualize that, feel it, own it, believe it.
I'm Diane Campbell from Mercer County College. I would like to see levels of academic support for students in developmental ed, so that one of our goals could be to get everybody through on the first try.
Hi, I'm Sarah McGower from Brookdale Community College. I would love to see on our campus for the first year experience that we're piloting and the program that we're slowly building for it to actually be mandatory for all the students. I think it would kind of force them to make those connections with the counselors or with the faculty members at our campus and across any campus in New Jersey. I think it would be an excellent idea. We put a lot of value in first year experience, and I think it's a great program. So, thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Dwayne from Hudson County Community College. I believe that in terms of, if it could be possible that students coming in, outside of relating to administrators, they do relate to peers, and I believe that a peer mentoring program, sort of something similar with the EOF, because the EOF folks, they do have paid student workers who are aligned with our students. I think it's a comprehensive approach. You do have the advisors, you do have the counselors, you do have the administrators, but as far as a peer-to-peer, I think that should be aligned probably with any student success course. in which students have access to their own peers, folks who have been there, who have been on the same road, who may dislike a certain thing about the college, but are able to discuss such woes with another peer. So I think having such a peer program, once you get in from orientation into these student success courses, is something I would like to see.
I love the idea that the guy from Hudson talked about, us mirroring kind of what EOF does. My thing is, and it's the age-old thing that Casey spoke of where it may never happen in our life existence, I would like to see faculty realize that in the student support, they are on the front lines. For every student I see as the director of EOF, there's probably 100 of the 9,000 at our school that we don't see. And the professors have the opportunity, or the faculty have the opportunity to see what I don't see of a kid who may start out great and then have that change in their behavior and link them with me so that I can help them be successful and retain them or avoid a problem happening.
A few years ago, there was a piece of data that I read, actually not a piece of data, but a body of work that I read. Starting the doctoral program, I was very warm and fuzzy about the community college, its mission and access. Come one, come all, we are the door for immigrants and so forth. Come one, come all, we will take you. And very proud of the fact that I work in a sector where that philosophy of, the education is the great democratization of society. But I was doing some reading on particularly the retention of minority students, particularly Hispanics and African Americans. Hispanics being the highest dropout rate in all education sectors. And this body of work talked about how what we do and how we function, as Dr. Crabill mentioned, you want to come part-time, you come part-time. You want to take online, just online, that's fine too. You want to pay now, you want to pay later, we will do it the way you want to do it. However you want to start, we have a place for you. That what we do is not likely to achieve any kind of success with students. And the place where minority students are most successful are highly prescriptive private colleges, where students have very few choices. And their success rates with these students, the ones we see the most of, are through the roof. Because they understand there that the students don't come in with a college language. What does matriculated mean? What's a credit? I remember starting college and being told that I had to take 12 credits. I thought, how am I going to manage 12 classes? How will I, not understanding that it was 4 classes or 3 classes, depending on. So the challenge for me as a Chief Student Affairs Officer at our institution, heavily minority, we're a majority minority institution, is how do we take the work done by private institutions that show tremendous success with the students we serve and deliver it in a way that is consistent with what we can do with our mission, etc. Telling a student, whatever you want to do, we'll work it out. You want to go from full-time to part-time? I'm not going to ask any questions. We're just going to do that because we're all about access. The challenge is, how do we take those principles, prescriptive, should be full-time, mandate, things are required. How do we do that in our environment? Because there is proof in the pudding that that is what works with the majority of students, particularly those that are first-generation college students. They need to be told what they have to do versus, it's that suggesting versus intrude. So that's a challenge, I think, for me and for us.
Just one last comment before we take a quick break, is that at Essex, and what was said before by Dr. Crabill, is that if we could have that infinity of resources and staff, it would be those social support services. Because we know from our experience that, and all of you know in the room, that we can take that student academically, no matter how low they come in, and move them through that process. But so many times it's those outside factors that are preventing them from succeeding. So if we had that infinity of resources, that's what we would put it on.